Hello there and welcome into Career Competitor. I'm Steve Meller and we are the show that seeks to light that competitive fire within you in order to jumpstart or optimize your career. I'm delighted to be welcoming in a friend of mine today, Jack Karavich, who is the CEO and founder of Tigeraire, and he's going to be telling us all about his product, and I'm going to be giving him a proper introduction here in just a second. But before I do that, let me tell you all about Career Competitor, specifically careercompetitor.com, where you can find all the information you need to know about the coaching service that is Career Competitor. I am now a fully fledged performance coach and culture consultant. I'm working with a variety of diverse clients across many different fields on what it means to optimize performance, really targeting those limitations potentially, or those dreams, let's say, that you're feeling are still quite out of reach. How do we make those things realistic? How do we break through those barriers that prevent us from optimizing our potential? I would love to give you 30 minutes free time. That's a 30-minute free consultation if you reach out to me at steve@careercompetitor.com, and we can arrange that 30-minute consultation today. Or you can head to careercompetitor.com, where you'll find a variety of places on the site where you can learn all about the coaching service, but of course also select one of the opportunities to set up a consultation with me as well. So it's all there at careercompetitor.com, and I look forward to you checking that out sometime soon. Now let's get on to introducing my guest for today, Jack Karavich, the founder of Tigeraire. And Tigeraire is focused on solving a significant problem that is the negative impact of excess heat in your protective headwear. It's a unique product, it's a unique service, and that's what makes Jack an ideal guy to bring onto the show today for us to discuss the implementation of an idea and then bringing that idea to life. So the process that is required in order to bring that idea to life. Jack and his company are well on their way. As he alludes to within the discussion, he still feels they've got many, many more levels to get to, but they have been able to go through their first round of investment with the company. So they are very much being supported now to moving on to those next levels. And what I love about Jack's background is he comes from corporate America, but has always been an entrepreneur at heart. And he's really doubled down on that entrepreneurial spirit in the last couple of years through the journey that is Tigeraire. There are going to be so many takeaways specifically for entrepreneurs. This is a great episode for that. But what I always challenge people, listeners specifically, on this show is to find something that is impactful for you. And when it comes to that, we're going to be talking a great deal about mindset today, that of tenacity, that of grit, that of discipline, all of these sort of characteristics that both in the entrepreneur world and in just about any other world can really help you out a lot. So much here for everybody. Like I said, entrepreneurs definitely have a pen and paper at hand. There's some just great insight courtesy of Jack. But at the same time, I'm just excited to be able to bring this episode of the Career Competitor podcast to you with the founder of Tigeraire, Jack Karavich, and I hope you all enjoy. I am delighted to be welcoming on a good friend of mine, Jack Karavich, to the Career Competitor podcast. Jack, first and foremost, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm great, Steve. Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on, man, and it's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for the better part of 3 or 4 months, and you've been a busy guy, so it's totally understandable. You've got a business that's a couple years old in Tigeraire, and before we kind of dive into what we're going to talk about today, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and Tigeraire a little bit, just get everybody up to date with who it is we're talking to today.
Sure. So I'm the founder of a company that was started in my garage in New Orleans called Tigeraire. Our first product we developed was a product to helps with cooling football players. It's installed inside of their football helmet. Works with just a couple of the major brands out there, under Rydell and Schutt. It's an add-on, and it's being used by a number of Power 5 universities. We've had players now in the NFL, and we're expanding this year into high school and youth. So we're excited about a lot of growth there. And then simultaneously, we've released a second product line, industrial product line for hard hats in January this year. So we're really kind of going after kind of I would say a broad head cooling theme for our products that we're developing, releasing, and that we have in development. So there's more to come, and it's been really exciting. Before that, I've worked most of my career in digital and technology for the past 15 years. Started in more the operations project management side and just went all over in different directions, but stayed within that discipline across a variety of different industries over the last 15 years.
So you've seen corporate America, and now you are well and truly about as deep into being an entrepreneur as you can be with your current expansion with the company. And the one thing that we're going to try to really cover today for our listeners is the idea of taking an idea, implementing it, and then really starting to bring it to life. And what a great person to obviously do that is someone who's taken a very unique idea in what you're doing with Tigeraire and now taking off to not just within football helmets, but even going into the hard hat industry within construction as well. It is a unique idea, but I know you're a man that has been around, as you just sort of said there, from a digital tech world. There's that is what that world is. It's filled with people every day coming up with ideas and trying to bring them to life. So, you can give the example, obviously, of what you did with Tigeraire, but just speaking freely now. When we talk about this notion of, hey, I've got an idea, like for you personally, having been around that type of an environment for so long, what does that initial step, what do those first steps start to look like?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, and I feel like it kind of strikes at the core of probably the way a lot of entrepreneurs are wired and how they think at the beginning. But I was reflecting on it, as before the call and then as the call was getting started, and what would I do if I had an idea today, right? And it was what I wanted to move and focus on, and I think that this comes more from all of the times I've failed as an entrepreneur, which far outweigh the times I've succeeded.
Sure.
This being the only real solid example of it. And something that you have to talk about freely when you meet with investors and others. But I would say the very first thing that kind of comes with an idea is going out and talking to people about it that you trust. There's a few different schools of thought that I've learned. People take different approaches. There's sort of this, keep it very close to yourself. Don't share it with many folks. You'll see startups raise money and be in stealth mode for long periods, and that is a strategy. And what I found is that I have a very limited area of knowledge or expertise that goes deep in this world, and frankly, most of it isn't applicable to building a business from the ground up across innumerable disciplines on my own. Mm-hmm. So what I felt has worked well for me as I've sort of honed my entrepreneurial instinct over the years is sharing more widely and bringing in people that I trust that have expertise in software development, mechanical engineering, design, finance, accounting, whatever it might be, to help me just make sense of is this even something that I should pursue. Right. And I think that there's a certain amount of just understanding the market also at the beginning. And it happens in different ways, depending on what the idea is and how it comes to life as is it just an idea written on a bar napkin, or is it a prototype, in our case that made in our garage out of materials that I got from Home Depot and some old computer parts. But in this case, it was just, I think, a certain amount of just good luck and fortune, as far as that old saying of, when, opportunity meets preparation, and had an idea and built it in the garage and happened to just in that moment in my life have access to some incredible folks over in the LSU athletics department at that moment, and shared with them the idea. And it really just took a life of its own from there. And I think that notion of, not being afraid to try, not being afraid to ask people, most of the time it won't go anywhere. And I think that's part of the frustration of entrepreneurship. But I really think there's a certain initial step where it's about understanding, is this an idea that just makes sense to me, or is it an idea that makes sense to a lot of people? And I think that's that first step that, for me, it has to happen.
Yeah. It's really cool way of presenting it, because what I'm hearing is there's this notion of making sense of it, And that's very opinion oriented. Lots of people, and you obviously need a trust circle, so to speak, of people that you trust, you value their opinion, and for whatever reason, they come from a background where that opinion truly is of value. But then there is this factual element too, in terms of understanding the market, and looking at things and saying, does this idea actually serve any particular market that's out there currently?
Right.
And if it does, what does that market look like? So again, just kind of building off your story. And what I love about you saying there is so many failures and just the one success. It's the beauty of entrepreneurship. You only need the one, right? You just got to get that one.
Oftentimes that's it. You're right.
Exactly.
One great success in entrepreneurship typically can just, make its mark on its own despite many failures
Right.
before or after. I mean, I know entrepreneurs that had great successes in their career and will laugh about, I've invested in or started another 20 companies since then, and they've all lost money. Right. And so it really is, can be a very defining attribute of entrepreneurship is it can be singular success that defines your career.
And as we've already touched on with Tigeraire is the unique component of what it is you're providing. And just from having gotten to know you here over the last few months, hearing firsthand from you that there really was no true, clear example of this sort of product existing out there. Is that correct?
No, in athletics, it's never existed at all. Now, there have been a
Right.
few different, formulations of trying to cool folks in the industrial space, and it was exciting. And we definitely got a lot internally first, and then externally from folks we talked to, even to this day, that will just be like, I don't know how this was ever not done before in football or in athletics. And we'd be like, yeah, well, we feel the same way, right? Like, we don't
Right.
know how it wasn't done before.
Yeah.
And that's, oftentimes that's kind of the greatest compliment we can get, is folks just saying it just seems so obvious, that it's like, well, that's such a great, kind of commentary around what we're developing here, because we want it to seem obvious. We want people to be like, of course I want that. Of course I want my children to use that. Of course I want to use that. So that goes a long way in just understanding market fit. And we've been very fortunate to have had market fit right out of the gate, which is not common, which having tried and failed many times. We'll talk about, startups that are very well funded, Series A, Series B startups, Bay Area startups, big time investment money, 50 million more in investment money they've raised, that are banging their heads against the wall trying to find market fit, trying to get people to realize that whatever it is they're creating is as great as they think it is. And it's, that can be a big challenge later in industry as far as you grow as a startup. So to have that almost on day one, and a lot of that I think I owe to the folks at LSU, to Greg Stringfellow and Jack Marucci, who I think, as I came in, there was sort of this qualifying step in partnering with them where they understood the customer base as far as, well, we didn't even see it as a customer base, but I would say just that, the audience that would be using the product, and made it very clear, if the athletes don't want to use this, then we're not using it. Right. Like it's not about how much, Jack or Greg, as individuals, we think it's great. If they don't want it, like, it's not happening. So there was this sense of almost like microcosm of market fit that had to even be validated for us to even talk about it more. And that was sort of a exciting and sort of stressful day. I mean, I showed up and it was, all right, let's get a player to try it on. And, we had Jamar Chase and all these amazing athletes, Derek Stingley and incredible players, just trying it on. I mean, across the team. And it was just, one after another, just phenomenal feedback, but sort of this sense of like, oh gosh, like if a bunch of folks don't like this, like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's just we're done, right? Like they made that clear that there's nothing else to talk about.
Well, that's
So,
it's a really key point here, though, too. Is that we've kind of connected the dots here a little bit, because you've talked about this idea, this group of people that you can reach out to that you trust, but it's almost as though to really make that circle, to make that group of people as impactful as possible, do they have a direct connection to the market that it's going to impact? And I think that in itself is powerful, because again, if you're getting these great opinions and this great assessment from a whole bunch of people that maybe they have the money and the resources to support the idea, but they don't have any connection to the actual market that this potential product could be impacting,
Yeah.
then suddenly you turn around and you go, well, it's great to have that resources in terms of who these people are, but at the same time, what does that insight truly mean if there's no next step, if you will, to what you can obtain from, their opinion and their insight?
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely correct. And, it's funny, you frame it really well. And I think the thing that almost became kind of a rallying cry was at first more of a joke, but then became more of a rallying cry for us was this sense that as we were going and meeting with football teams, we had a lot of really incredible advocates, influential folks that jumped on board very quickly, because I think that there was this very authentic reaction from the players, and people were seeing it and they wanted to help. And the way, I think the way folks in positions of influence help is typically, I know so-and-so who has a lot of money, or I know so-and-so on the board of directors here. I know the president of this company or this university. But what we knew almost right out of the gate, and I think a lot of it was just entrusting the folks that we were working with at LSU, was that it was this notion, if the players don't want it, right, it doesn't matter if you know the president of the university. So there was this joke of ours that we would be like, we don't go and talk to people in the boardroom. We go and talk to people at the loading dock. And, that's how you get into the equipment room at every university. That's how you talk to the folks that purchase the equipment for the players. You don't go through, the boardroom, you go through the loading dock. And there's just so much truth to that. I mean, to this day now, our head of sales, Don Lloyd and team members, I'll pull over when there's workers on the road paving and building highways, and he'll pull over and we'll just stop and talk to folks and be like, hey, you're wearing a hard hat, check this out. What do you think about this? And it's there's just something to be said for, that level of kind of organic conversation with the people that are going to use it, because at the end of the day, you can go to the boardroom, you can go to the people with the money, but it goes back to the market fit conversation. Inevitably, someone's going to have to connect with the end user. And if that end user or that audience, it's not resonating with them, well, you got a lot of work to do then to figure out how to fix this product that you're now building or getting investment money around. So again, it was much more of a grind the way we've done it, but there's some incredible benefits that have come with this approach. And that just feeds into more, I think, entrepreneurial conversation around, grit and determination and other things. So
yeah, and I would love to get to that, honestly, because it is a big part of that process towards bringing that idea to life. It would be wonderful if bringing an idea to life was as simple as go from point A to point B, but you and I both know how unrealistic that is. And at the same time, some of the things you're saying here, though, there's an element to everything that you've done so far where you've always been prepared for what that next step may look like. And even as something as simple as having a hard hat in your passenger seat every time you get in your car, just in case you happen to bump into somebody that would benefit from the product and can give it a try. And that's a level of anticipation. That's a level of initiative as an entrepreneur that can go a really long way. So just with that one example, what else sort of comes to mind as you start to think about maybe your story or just some of the examples you've seen in terms of those true soft skills, those true undeniable qualities that people need to have in their, in their toolbox?
Yeah. I was just now thinking about, before Tigeraire had started, I had another startup that I had founded while we were living in Atlanta prior to COVID. And, it went on pause for enough months that I was funding it myself and was like, early COVID, we all remember it was, end of days. And,
right.
Who knows like how we're going to, find a bunker and whatever happened back in April, May, of 2020, dark days at that time. But so I ended up putting that on pause and then kind of falling backwards, quite frankly, into Tigeraire. But I had this incredible conversation with the president and co-founder of Greenlight Financial, which is an incredible startup in Atlanta, creating just a more accessible financial experience to children and youth. But I met with Johnson Cook. I had left corporate I've started businesses in the past, and I've lost a lot of money. I lost everything more than once, more than twice.
Right.
And we're talking, and I was like, it's been about 6 months, and we're going to open up a seed round here, and it's just we're just kind of kicking off, and definitely ready to raise money, but was just hoping to see more traction right now, and blah 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 blah, having that kind of conversation. And Johnson kind of laughs, and dude, he's like, look at the car you pulled up in. He's like, I know the neighborhood you live in. He's like, you want to know sacrifice with a startup? He's like, give it 2 years. He's like, you don't know how you're going to pay your grocery bill that month, right? Like if I'm going to convince people, to back, something that I'm doing entrepreneurial, I mean, they need to know that I'm all in. And I've been lucky to take that moment and be able to sort of, regroup with a new company. And people that have known me for a long time, and I'll sling my credit card out, corporate card, my card.
Right.
Oh, let's go, let's move fast, let's take care of people, let's have a great time, and let's sort of party as hard as we work, and make sure people feel that the experience and the time that they take away from their personal life, that they're being rewarded for it. And I'm a big believer in that. We've kind of turned that around in this experience in this company, and it's really been more about sharing of that equity and letting people know, hey, from day one, and I was chastised a little by some folks, but not in an overtly negative way, but really like, Jack, you're sharing too much equity with people. And I'm like, well, people are sharing a lot with me, right? They're giving us a lot of time, and I can't pay them, right? So I want them to know that that what they're sacrificing, what they're doing, means something to me. And it became kind of that thought process of do as much as we can with what we have. To this day now, I mean, I had a couple members of the team that have known me for a while, picked them up at the airport, and folks would stay at the house in New Orleans when we were getting started, and they'd hop in the car at the airport, and they'd be like looking for my favorite moment. Someone was looking for the electronic button to move the seat back and forth in the passenger seat, and I was like, you got to pull the bar underneath the front of the seat. And he started laughing, and he's like, wow, no automatic seats, Jack. I'm impressed. Yeah. And I was like, well, you know what? Startup, man, hashtag startup, right? And I feel like that is something I've taken a great deal of pride in, is that, you really, it's not just rolling your sleeves up. It's not just, doing the hard work, but you have to make some sacrifices, and you have to make sacrifices that are difficult. To this day, I have not taken a salary from the company. And that was a hot topic, with the seed round, and, in the process of doing some paperwork, because it's just good business practice as we grow now that, that I'm, kind of, considered a full-time employee on paper. But the reason I didn't do it was really just because, if I can find a way to survive right now, and I'm fortunate, with my wife and her career, we're running in parallel, that, we're able to live, and we're happy, and the kids are happy. And, I'd rather use that money for a software engineer or mechanical engineer, or, operations help, or material, whatever it is we could put it towards. If I can get by, a little bit longer without, that money, then I'm going to find a way to do it. Take less and give more to the company, find ways to do as much as we can in that regard.
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly there. You kind of took the words out of my mouth. It's just that ability to make personal sacrifice with always having the focus of the success of the company. And what's so funny is here I am starting my entrepreneurial journey, and it's almost embarrassing to call myself an entrepreneur sometimes, when so much of what I'm doing is really just a service. There's very little investment. It's just it's myself. And at the same time, though, I will say that the idea of actually moving money from money that is earned through your business to yourself is a truly just strange, bizarre thing, because this whole notion of just like, okay, how much do I value myself? How much do I value the work that I'm putting in right now? Have I earned a paycheck? Does the business is the business ready to give me a paycheck? And honestly, like that's probably the biggest inner conversation I have, is just like, maybe move a couple $100, but I'm the same as you in terms of very fortunate with a wife of mine who's doing very well in her career, and I can be patient, I can be smart about the way I do this. But it is a tough one, and I think any entrepreneur hearing this who's maybe excited by that first bit of income that you get and ready to sort of take that income and make it your income, there's an element of caution that they need to almost treat that moment with and think, what does this decision do to the future of the company if I were not to make this same sale or this same whatever it may be in terms of the income? What would I be able to survive? Would the business specifically be able to survive next month if I was to pay myself this month? And it is a truly just difficult challenge and balance to handle, especially someone who's only just started it myself.
It's such an interesting thing to have it resonate in such a similar way as you're talking through everything you just described, the feelings of, before I give myself this money, where else could I put that money? I know that sentiment so well. It's funny to hear you say it because I couldn't have articulated it any better than you just did. But there's so many things that go with it. I mean, I think we all have like that, there's parts imposter syndrome, parts, am I really deserving of it now when there's other things we could apply it towards? And, I think it's, I'd like to think that, thinking that way and approaching, business, ownership that way, I really think it's a responsible and healthy way to look at business ownership. And I think, you should be proud of that, mentality. And I think it is the right mentality. And I think, in the long term, success, is going to be more wholesome and more rewarding, for those that, that have that type of approach and looking at, themselves as almost kind of a servant leader and being able to say, hey, I don't take from this business any more than I have to. Right. But I take care of everyone else and I'm here for the business. I'm here to grow this. But yeah, it's, not again, to pretend that you and I would not benefit from the success of our businesses, right, in the long term. But sure. I think it's really that having that long-term mentality and not a short-term mentality is key. I would say that, going with the last topic, the thing that just always just kind of resonates with me and it comes out constantly is this notion of grit. I tell folks we have a Mike Tyson quote up in the office that reads essentially, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Essentially, it was this quote of his from many years ago. Not that Mike Tyson's, some sort of, entrepreneurial role model or otherwise, but right. But the quote has a lot of, oomph in it, which is sure. Kind of this sense that it's like, you go in there, all things in life, right? Like, and you know what you're doing. You got the plan, and you go from the idea, you have this moment, you have a product, and now you start putting all the pieces in play. You're incorporating, you're getting business insurance, and, you're putting up a website, and you start really like, you start to really play business then, right? Like is what I used to tell people. I'm like, I'm playing business right now. And, it's don't push anything because it'll fall over. It's all just painted doors. And, we're on a set of a play called Tigeraire, right? Don't bump into any of the scenery because it'll fall over. But the thing there that really comes out though is the fact that it is that easy, for things to go wrong and things go wrong constantly, like every day. And I think that that's an element of what, and then what, right? How do you deal with that? Because I've really come to believe that the mark of a successful entrepreneur, good business idea or not, because there's a lot of really not great business ideas that get very well funded, that go very far for a lot of different reasons. But business idea aside, there's just this element of tenacity and grit that, you have to wake up every day and say, hey, I'm going to get knocked down. I'm going to fail a bunch of times today, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to smile and I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much about that quote, that Mike Tyson quote, the word that comes to mind immediately for an entrepreneur is just rejection, is dealing with rejection. It's just, and for me personally, I've already had a couple of really exciting phone calls with, potential clients and it's just like, well, this is going to be a yes. There's no doubt this is going to be a yes. And then a week later, it's a no. And you just go, You just sort of sit there and you go, how was that a no? Like, how
Yeah.
was that a no? But you take about 10 or 15 minutes. You take the initial punch and you
Yep.
just think and you reflect and you try to wonder how to absorb that punch and how to learn from that moment. And before you know it, an hour later, you might still be a little pissed off the fact that you got the no, but you're already putting another foot in front of the other and thinking about how will I get that next yes? What does
Yeah.
that look like? And that's the thing in the service industry that I'm in, is that you put yourself out there time and time again, and you just sort of sit there waiting for the yes or the no, and your success is measured sadly by yeses and nos, and
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
get used to a lot more no's than yeses. At least when you're first starting out. Something you said there that obviously resonates massively with the podcast, with our audience, is being competitive with yourself. And so much of what this show has become over the last 4 years is not about just being competitive towards your career, but it's actually establishing a competitor within you and saying that, listen, I'm going to make a career of competing. I'm going to actually take this competitive mindset and aspire to implement it within all aspects of my life, not so that I'm always trying to win, but more so just to hold myself accountable, just to keep myself going, to keep myself striving for more each and every day. And it's very much an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
As we start to bring this interview to an end, I would love for you just to maybe leave the listeners here with, just from a competitive standpoint, what it is for you as you look ahead now, you look towards the future, you've had this idea, you've got it implemented, you're really seeing the process of it coming to life now with one eye on the future, whether that's a year, 5 years from now, however you define the future. What does it mean for you as a competitor as you look towards the future for Tigeraire? What does that look like for you now?
Oh gosh. Great question. I would say as a competitor, we're still kind of in the early throes, right? We're not, I'm not holding the belt above my head right now,
Right.
so to speak. So, we've won a couple early fights at the local bar, and we're far from the main stage in Las Vegas, but I think it's just that, right? Like that's it. You want to be 35-0, not 3-0, and nothing changes, I guess is the point, right? Like you really don't know success as an entrepreneur and that stability until, ultimately you feel comfortable enough where the financial reward maybe doesn't, pinch as much in your mind, like we were talking about, when you have to write that check to yourself, or you need to, take that salary or whatever it might be. I think you reach that point just from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because it's business, that, you measure yourself, success as intangibles, absolutely. And things that, are, more important than money, in just, your integrity and how you run a business and who you are and what you represent. And I think we all would like to strive to be those best versions of ourselves. But, when all the dust settles and when all is said and done, there's also a number associated with it. And if you want to be competitive, right, there's a number of rings you get, right? There's, like, Tom Brady will be remembered for many things, but he'll be remembered for 7 rings more than most things, right?
Sure.
Same thing goes for Jordan. Same thing goes for, just people in general. So there's that element of, you can do a lot right, but if you don't, get those numbers and have that record of success, when you're done, that's in writing, and, you might fall short. And I think that's what's always going to be kind of in the back of an entrepreneur's mind, is that no matter how many things are going right, until you look in that account and you kind of sit back and go, hell yeah, right? You made it, right? Then,
Right.
then that you got work left to do. And that's kind of, the way I look at it is, we have a very high goal at what we think we can achieve and where we can get to.
Sure.
And that's what we're going after. And we don't know what twists and turns are going to lie ahead, but yeah, our disposition and our demeanor doesn't change. Eye of the tiger. We're going out there every morning and we're gritting and grinding.
It's all there, man. It's all harmonious with the brand. So I love it. I love it. But at the same time, Jack, what you've done here is that you've presented a notion for how to implement an idea and a process for bringing it to life. But really what you're saying here at the end is that if you do that part well, and if you are exhaustive in that, if you really lay the foundations and you really do your due diligence when it comes to how to get that idea to life, then there's an element of just stick to the plan. Just continue to reinvest in the very principles that have gotten you going to get you to these end goals. And I love hearing that. It's a great way to bring this to an end because for me, I'm just such an advocate for taking the time on the front end to lay the right types of foundations so that we can almost ensure that there's always going to be success moving forwards, even if it slows down and speeds up at different times, even if sometimes we have to take a step back. Those foundations, those principles really set us up for success. And clearly you guys are set up for enormous success and great things in the future. I'm just excited to be a part of this from a bystander and be able to see what you do from a distance. And already I've seen it just having known you for a few months here. It's awesome, man. It's great. It's exciting. And I really just appreciate the time, the insight today that I do believe if anyone sat at home with an idea, they're going to be like, okay, this we can do this. I can do this. There's a plan here, courtesy of Jack. So appreciate that. Appreciate that insight and appreciate your time today, buddy.
Very kind words. I appreciate it, man. And so excited that we got to do this. And obviously huge fan of what you're doing. And thanks for having me, Steve. Thanks so much.
And my thanks again to Jack for joining us on the show today. As I said at the outset of the show, tons of content specifically for entrepreneurs, but I really do believe that if you were listening intently enough, you will have been able to pull out something that is beneficial for you, no matter what your career, whatever your walk of life may be. And just some takeaways that I really want to just hammer home very quickly here, because quite frankly, there's a simplicity to what Jack was presenting here within our discussion. So just takeaways include talk to trustworthy people, sharing and making sense of an idea, knowing your market, and then bringing that idea directly to the end user. If you are someone with an idea at hand, there's your 4 steps right there. There's your 4 steps of how to take an idea and go towards that process of implementing it and bringing it to life. Talking to trustworthy people, sharing, making sense of it, knowing your market, and bringing that product directly to the end user. One other thing that Jack said there as well, and he jokingly said playing business. And for me, this is one of those terms that you can really take it a couple of different ways. And within the discussion, Jack was certainly being lighthearted with it in terms of just getting up and giving it a go and seeing what we can do, and don't touch anything in terms of, hey, we've got all these models around us. They're very delicate. If you touch them in the wrong place, they may fall, we may cause problems, etc. But as competitors, and that's what we are, as you listen to this show and you tune in every single time, we're looking here to optimize our performance. We're looking to instill that fire within you to be a competitor. Playing business. How do you get competitive? How do you put yourself on a playing field each and every day within the domain that you get to execute your career? There has to be a way that you can start to present this almost game-like scenario within the work that you do each and every day to bring the competitor out in yourself. Sure, we don't necessarily want to make it about wins and losses all the time, but we certainly can find ways to compete within the game by playing the business that we are a part of. So just that added there, food for thought, something to think about, something to maybe apply. So much fantastic content courtesy of Jack today, and I'm so glad that he was able to join us. But in the meantime, so many interviews continually lining up, lots of ideas and thoughts that I'm going to start putting into some competitive calls as well soon. So many reasons to continually come back and make sure that you're listening to the Career Competitor Podcast. Make sure you are sharing this with your friends. Let them know, hey, this is a great podcast. This is a great opportunity for you to learn to optimize who it is you are. Be sure to subscribe. Those of you listening on Apple Podcasts, do not go without firstly subscribing and secondly taking the time to click that 5th star on your way out. Appreciate the time. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Best of luck with everything you've got going on. And bye for now.